Okay, I think we are ready to get started. So again, just thank you so much for joining us, guys. Let me just reintroduce myself. My name is Mizan. I am the volunteer for the Association of Muslim Lawyers. We have organized this event to create more awareness about the importance of family justice campaigns, what kind of family justice campaigns there are already, and what we can do to support them. And we have three amazing speakers for you guys tonight. We have Attiq Malik from the, he's a solicitor and he's from the Justice for Shukri campaign. We also have Sukhdev Real, the mother of Ricky Real, and her daughter Tish Real as well, who will be talking about the Justice for Real campaign. And we have Natasha Thompson from Inquest. She is the Grenfell project coordinator and senior caseworker as well. We have three amazing speakers, and I'm pretty sure they'll give you a lot of food for thought. But before we go into it, this event is organized by the Association of Muslim Lawyers and the Society of Asian Lawyers. And so we're just going to give a brief introduction to the Association of Muslim Lawyers and the Society of Asian Lawyers. So Remy, can you please unmute and give a brief introduction about the Association of Muslim Lawyers? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mizan. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Searching for Justice event. The Association of Muslim Lawyers is a voluntary organisation that was set up back in 1993, and we have several aims and objects, and one of them is to empower Muslim lawyers to eradicate injustice and deliver positive impact to our communities and beyond. We also support and promote the advancement of students and Muslim legal professionals in the judiciary, and tackle all forms of hatred and encourage interfaith and intercommunity dialogue. One of the main things that we do are events such as these alongside several fellow groups, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce the president of the Society of Asian Lawyers, Ranjit Sond. Ranjit.
Thank you, Remy and Mizan. I'd like to welcome everybody to this wonderful event as well. A warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Much like the Association of Muslim Lawyers, the Society of Asian Lawyers was actually formed around the same time, early 1990s, and we have been representing the interests of Asian lawyers ever since in the UK. Our main objective is to increase diversity within the legal profession, particularly at the top, where studies and reports have shown repeatedly that diversity doesn't look as good and the numbers aren't as great at the top of the profession. We do this through a range of means and kind of ways of doing that, including a series of events, both educational and social. We have a mentoring scheme as well. And we also like to publish articles on our website wherever we can. We also work with the Law Society and the Solicitors Regulation Authority on a range of issues. Most recently, we were on the focus group that helped shape the SQE examination that's coming into force in September 21. We also have representation on the Legal Aid Practitioners Group, as well as the Ministry of Justice group that is reviewing the criminal legal aid system. We're really happy to be collaborating with the Association of Muslim Lawyers, and not for the first time. So I'm really happy for this opportunity today to also help shine a light on such an important area. And I'm really looking forward to the speakers today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Remy and Ranjit, for that introduction. Yes, please, guys, check out the Association of Muslim Lawyers and the Society of Asian Lawyers. They both do amazing work. So please check them out. What I will do is I will introduce our first speaker. And the first speaker is Attiq Malik. He's a solicitor and director of Liberty Law Solicitors, and he'll be speaking on behalf of the Justice for Shukri campaign. So please, brother Attiq, do you mind unmuting? And yeah, you have about 15 minutes.
Okay, excellent. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for having me on, everybody. So, the pursuit of justice. You'd have thought that in England, the country which is said to have the greatest legal system in the world. Can you hear me? Everybody else, you said someone's saying no sound. I don't know. Okay,
I
you
can
can hear me. Brilliant.
I
Okay,
can.
brilliant. So in England, the controversy says you're the greatest legal system in the world, that the pursuit of justice should be quite easy. However, after I tell you the story of what the Shukri family went through to try and get justice, I would invite all of you to make your own decision on whether or not the pursuit of justice in the UK is easy or not. And if it is difficult, if it is hard, is that because the system's rigged? Is it because people are unable to access justice? Or is it other factors? And again, I would invite you all to make your own conclusions when you hear the story of the family of Shukri Abdi and what they had to go through. And before I start that, one fact that always stands out to me when I talk about justice campaigns and the necessity for family justice campaigns and multi-pronged approaches in justice campaigns is this very basic fact. In the UK, the last time a police officer was prosecuted successfully for a homicide in respect of a death in custody for murder or manslaughter, the last successful prosecution was in 1969. That's over 50 years ago. So in over 50 years, there has never been a successful prosecution of a police officer for a death in police custody in a homicide case. Now, that alone should start alarm bells ringing for all of you of how is that even possible? We're not saying that all police are bad, but are you really saying that every single death in custody, there was no unlawful criminal act? And why do we have that as a statistic? One of many. I mean, there's many other statistics you can go into, but for me, that is the most striking statistic. And then bringing it back home to the Shukri case, a refugee family, a migrant family, a family of little or no means in a strange land. And when they came to this land and they suffered the tragedy they did, and the mother of Shukri was interviewed, one of the first things she said was, I came to this land for freedom and justice, and where is the justice? And why did she say that? She said that because very soon after the tragic incident in June 2019, very soon after that incident, the police said, there's no case here, there's nothing to answer. And the family were bombarded with speculation of what had happened. And one of the questions that I'm often asked is, how did you get involved in this case? I mean, the case happened in Bury in Manchester. We operate in Luton in London. How is it that I got involved in this case and why? Well, at the time when this tragedy happened, social media was exploding. People were talking about what happened. How can the police not, do an investigation? And different theories were coming out of what happened to Shukri Abdi. And myself, I received a number of calls from different people saying, look, you should get involved. But at the same time, I was also being informed that other solicitors were also being contacted. So my position initially was, look, I don't need to get involved because there's many competent solicitors who have already been contacted. Let them step forward, let them do their job. Because there are many competent lawyers in the country, solicitors, barristers, etc. But then a week or so later, it came back to me again, and I was told that people are happy to take it on, but the problem is funding. Nobody wants to take it on because nobody's getting paid. And some of you may think, well, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? People are doing it for the money. But then you've got to understand the system. Access to justice in this country has been eroding for many years. And that gradual erosion is still ongoing and is due to lack of funding, where the government has taken away funding for legal aid, taken away legal help completely in certain areas, and where it is available, it's very limited. And even legal aid lawyers who practice in this area, the legal aid fees that they get are just so difficult that it's almost unsustainable. Since COVID started, almost 200 legal aid firms have already collapsed. And so the situation is just so tragic in terms of legal aid providers existing to provide legal aid funded cases and assistance, and even for people who are aggrieved to obtain funding. In the case of Shukri, the problem was the inquest was not an Article 2 inquest. It was not an inquest to do any state authority that was responsible potentially for the death. It was to do with children at a riverside. And unfortunately, there was no funding for it. And so at that point, I made the decision that we should assist. It was an extremely tragic situation, and we got involved. And when I had my first meeting with the family of Shukri, I said the same thing to them, which I say to everybody that we deal with in family justice cases, is to be prepared. Be prepared to be let down by the system. Be prepared for a long and bumpy road. You're not going to get an easy win. And be prepared for lots of criticism, even from within your own community. And unfortunately, every single one of those things that I said to them at the outset happened. And what I said to them is, and this is the reality of justice campaigns, is that justice takes many forms and different stages. And so we need to break it down into stages. And if we achieve each stage, once we've achieved that stage is a stage of victory. And in terms of stages, the first stage in all justice campaigns has to be the establishment of the truth. Because in most, if not all justice campaigns, the first hurdle is getting to the truth. The people responsible directly or indirectly for the failures to the family will always try and cover their own backs. And when that happens, the truth gets muddied. And getting to the truth is important for two reasons. For the person pursuing justice, knowing the truth of why they suffered that tragedy in the first place is an important component for them. It's irrespective of what happens at court. Secondly, courts decide on evidence, and sometimes the evidence might not be there, but you know you've suffered an injustice. And that's where the court of public opinion is also important. Because in the court of public opinion, not only can you get the truth out there, and irrespective of what any court says, you know the world sees the truth and is with you. But in the pursuit of justice, having the spotlight from the court of public opinion on that court of law or that institution that you are challenging is so important, because it makes it even harder for an institution or whatever parties are involved to brush things under the carpet. Because that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? When there's an injustice, often the complaint is that the people who are responsible for failings have brushed things under the carpet to cover their own backs. And so the first step of the pursuit of justice is the establishment of truth. And so in the case of Shukri Abdi, that's exactly what happened. The family justice campaign group got together, multi-pronged adopted, which is always adopted in these sorts of cases. And the multi-pronged approach was legal team, prong 1, family, prong 2, justice campaign group, prong 3. And they all have their own value to this, and they all operate in different ways. Without the family, there is no case. Without the legal team, there is no legal challenge. And without the campaign group, there is no public spotlight. And it's with all three working together in unison that you have a formula that becomes really powerful. But at the same time, because they're separate, they can also act in autonomous to each other, so that one's actions doesn't tarnish the credibility of the other. And so it's a very fine balance of a multi-pronged approach in justice campaigns, which is the only way to get anywhere near to getting to justice. I mean, look at Grenfell. We're still fighting just to find out what the truth was of what really happened and why. It's not about a fridge blowing up. It's about the cladding, about who was responsible for this. You know, we've got people on this panel today who've got very good insight into the issues of Grenfell. But again, before we can get to holding people to account, the first part is the truth. What is the truth? And that was the first part of our battle. Before I continue, how long have I got left? Just so I can get a gauge.
5 minutes.
Oh, brilliant. I've got 5 minutes. Okay, so what happened in the case of Shukri then? The public knew full well exactly what was going on leading up to the coroner's court. The inquest that took place, initially, it was just going to be a tick box exercise. So the first battle was to make sure it was a full and proper hearing where all the evidence was heard. And the importance of that, again, comes back to what I started with, because when we had all the evidence pulled out and heard, the family finally knew what the truth was of what happened to little Shukri. But not just the truth of what happened to her, They also got to see in broad daylight what happened in terms of failures, who failed them, which institutions, and how and why. And if you look at the case of Shukri, the way the coroner's court inquest went, you could get a verbatim, day-to-day, blow-by-blow account of everything that happened in court, because there were journalists there reporting back each and every day. And so at the end of the inquest process, which was quite long-winded for various reasons, what you had was, not only did the Shukri Abdi family campaign almost get a finding of what they wanted, and the case isn't finished because we got so close, it's going to be carrying on. And I'll leave the next chapter of it, I'll leave that to the Q&As just in case people want to know more and just to save time. But not only did that happen, but the court of public opinion finally knew what really happened. And that is a game changer, because when the truth is out there, it's a very different scenario to challenging those that you wish to hold account than to when you don't have the full facts. And in a tragic case of death for the family of Shukri Abdi, as part of the grieving process, the fact that they finally know actually what really happened to the baby girl, and they know actually where the failures are, is huge. It's absolutely huge in comparison to where they started off from, where they had all sorts of stories and speculation being thrown at them, and they just didn't know where to go, what to look at, and what to do. And so in the pursuit of justice, what I would say the most important thing is, or one of the most important things is, to not only ensure that justice is seen to be done, but that it is actually done in terms of securing the real truth of what really happened, who is truly accountable, who has truly failed, and then to move to the next stage of holding those who failed to account. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, for that, Brother Attiq. That was such a powerful short talk, and such a powerful way of introducing the obstacles that the family for Shukri Abdi had to overcome. Thank you so much again. So next up, I'd like to hand the mic over to Natasha Thompson. She is from Inquest. She is the Grenfell Project Coordinator and Senior Caseworker. Natasha, thank you so much for being here. You have about 15 minutes for your talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody. So I'm just going to speak briefly about Inquest and what we do, why these family justice campaigns are important, and also what we can do to help, to assist, and to lend our support. A lot of what Attiq went through is the experience that a lot of our families talk about as well. You know, after a death in custody is a long and complicated process. Families are trying to get to the truth of what happened a lot of the time. There isn't always this fight to blame someone. A lot of the time it's just about getting truth, and unfortunately families don't get that early on, and that is what causes a lot of the strain and stress, and has to drive these campaigns. And as I say, it being a long process means that a lot of the public support will fall away as well. People forget, people move on. Families are then having this hanging over their heads for a long time. And also people don't know what happens. A lot of the times when there is an investigation, families aren't able to disclose anything before inquest. They are having to keep certain things quiet because it's not disclosed publicly. So that can add a lot of pressure on. So just to explain who Inquest are, we're the only organisation in England and Wales that provide expertise on contentious deaths and their investigations to bereave people, to their lawyers, support agencies, media, parliamentarians, and the general public. So our casework does focus on include deaths in prison, police custody, following police contact, mental health settings, immigration detention, and also where there's matters of state and corporate accountability, so Hillsborough and the Grenfell Tower fire, for example. Inquest itself emerged from family campaigns. So we were established in 1981. at a time where the family voice and participation was basically non-existent in the investigation inquest process. Even though many families will feel that not much has changed, unfortunately, it has moved on, but not, of course, to the extent that is acceptable for anyone. So one of the cases that resulted in inquest being established was the murder of Blair Peach in 1979. So Blair was assaulted by a police officer at a protest and died shortly after. And at that time, for example, the coroner had refused to summon a jury. There was no disclosure of evidence to the families, no funding, despite the police and state being represented publicly. So over the years and after much pushing, families are more engaged in the process, more. And when I say this, I do stress that it's not to the extent, you know, as Attiq has explained with the family, it's not to the level or the extent that that is acceptable. And there's still much work to do to achieve the truth, justice, and accountability that should come out after a death such as this. So Inquest have been working, as I said, this is our 40th year. And during that time, we've worked with families to amplify their voice and their needs. Families are, of course, instrumental in everything that we're doing, because it is their experience, and that is what informs what we do. So the way we work is that we bring together casework support, family involvement, policy engagement, and identify thematic issues, statistics, and analysis. So the goal, of course, is that we end all deaths that are caused by unsafe detention, lack of care and the use of force, and by institutional failures. And we hope to do this by, you know, encouraging a system that treats bereaved families with dignity, holding those that are responsible to account, and sharing and implementing vital information. So any information that's coming out of cases and investigations, that we're feeding that back to lawyers, to families, so there can be change in the system. I'm going to jump straight forward because I'm talking a lot about Inquest, so I'll kind of go into the family experiences. So we are a campaign and charity, but the work that we do is made meaningful and effective by working and collaborating with the families and also their lawyers. The family and lawyer relationship is really important because, of course, the lawyers have the experience of families, of course, are having their experience are experiencing the death, and of course, everything that's happened. And though it is tiring and it feels like there's been little progress, one of the main jobs of Inquest is really to capture the family's testimony, their experience of these investigations and the inquest, and feeding that into the right places. So we do, for example, parliamentary work, policy work. For example, recently, a few years ago, we were involved in the Angelini Review, which looked at deaths and serious incidences in police custody. And we brought families to speak with the author of that. And you can read a lot of this information is on our website as well. However, as you may know, a lot of families are quite sick of these parliamentary reviews and submissions, and they feel that they actually don't go anywhere and get to the root of the issues. Now, one of them, a recent campaign that families have been involved in is with, for example, the Linden Centre. The Linden Centre in Essex, so from about 2000 to the present day, there's been a number of deaths, and this is around deaths in mental health care. So one of the families that we've worked with, Melanie Leahy, has actually run a campaign, and literally she started with a petition, and that petition resulted in a parliamentary debate that happened last week, calling for a public inquiry into the death of her son, and also the many people who have been impacted by deaths at that centre. She started the petition and relentless campaigning. There's been a wider group of families that have come forward. One of the things that we hear a lot about families who are going through this is that there is a sense of isolation, feeling like you're the only one that's going through it and no one knows. But once people start campaigning, once there's more information out there, what we realize is that when we amplify the voice of one family, more families tend to come to us, which is a shame, but it also means that people are actually being supported in their campaigns and their search for justice. And also, unfortunately, people don't have it in them all the time to be campaigning for years and years and years. And unfortunately, that is the case. So hopefully, with campaigns, you've got more of a support. More people for a long time, for example, of the United Families and Friends campaign. So
Natasha, I think you're going in and out.
And when they started campaigning, they'd realize that actually there's so many more people, aside from Black men, but also in different forms of custody, so in prison and mental health. Every year they run a protest going from Trafalgar Square to Downing Street to make it clear that for not just the US, it's not just other countries that are suffering human rights abuse. It is also that group, of course, is representative of that. Aside from that, there are so many other campaigns such as Cheney's Law, to Ola Cheney Lewis, who died in Croydon, who in a hospital when he was going through a mental health crisis. His family went through a harrowing inquest and have continued the pressure to get police came to hospital and restrained him. And since then, Cheney's Law has really been focusing on in police custody, in mental health settings, and the impact this has on people. There's the Mikey Powell campaign. We have recently set up the National Mikey Powell Memorial Family Fund. This is the first fund that's been supporting families with the financial burdens in seeking justice. So it's something that you can donate if to the National Mikey Powell Fund, Memorial Family Fund. And also, I mean, they literally support families who are going through a campaign, who are impacted by this as well. One of the things that Attiq mentioned, I just wanted to pick up on, was the funding aspect. So it's quite rightly, when someone dies in custody, there isn't an automatic rights or an automatic representation that families get from lawyers. There's funding. You can apply for legal aid funding. However, it's not a straightforward process. After a death, families are having to go through long drawn out processes and applications that look into their financial circumstances. And if they earn over a certain amount, which is not much, then they don't necessarily get funding. So I've got 5 minutes for that, thank you. So I think the importance of the legal aid campaign is an example of the importance of the lawyers, Inquest, and families working together. So it was an issue that, of course, we've seen over the years. And a few years ago, 2019, legal aid campaign, which is to put pressure on allowing non-means tested funding for families, because you have situations where families are going to Inquest unrepresented. When you've got the police, you've got prison, you've got mental health trust who represent the public for us, and families who have that same representation. Unfortunately, even though we are told that Inquests are not a real process, they very much feel like it's a family, so are having to fight tooth and nail just to get the most basic information in. After a death, it feels like there is a restricting information straight away from the very start, whereas families at the time just want to get to the truth of what's happened. Yeah, so I think I'll mention some things that families have said about the inquest process. One of the families has said that families are often left in the dark, trying to associate with a loved one dying while under the protection of the state, trying to make sense of what's happened both emotionally and legally. Having access to funded legal representation is paramount for justice. So we've seen inquests, and we've seen after deaths where families have been told that there's no inquest. But then after getting a lawyer, after going through that strenuous process, and actually they do push and get Article 2 inquests, and they come out with clear failures. And unfortunately, families are continuing having to do this. So as I say, legal aid funding is definitely something that we still are pushing for. So yeah, I think I'll finish there. If there's any questions, please do ask. And I will share as well in the chat the Inquest newsletter and our website, and also details on the legal aid campaign, so you can follow those, because the main part of these campaigns is the support from the public and information as well. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Natasha, for that. Unfortunately, in the last 5 minutes or so, your mic kept on going in and out, and it was a bit of difficulties hearing you, but hopefully we can explore some of the things that you were talking about in the Q&A. So hopefully I do have a few questions. So yes, thank you so much for that. So next up we have Sukhdev Reel. She is the mother of Ricky Reel, and you know that this is another very important family justice campaign. I heard Sukhdev Reel talk about her story in December 2019 in a conference, and it was such a powerful story. And ever since then, I've always wanted to do an event for her. So Sukhdev, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, you have 15 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone for inviting me and listening to my story. We heard a lot about justice campaigns and legal aid. First of all, we need to really question why do we have to set up justice campaigns? We set up justice campaigns because the people who are supposed to give us justice do not deliver that. And that's because of their racist views. And we came across that. I'm sorry if I get angry, but I do get angry sometimes. My son was only 20. A student went out to Kingston, somebody's birthday. He said he'd be back at 1 o'clock, failed to return. And at that time, I knew there was something wrong. I started ringing the police. First of all, I started ringing the hospital, thinking if they may have been involved in an accident. Then I started ringing the police and continued during the night. And in the morning, a police officer, when I phoned my local police station, I was told that they have a policy where the person over the age of 18, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. When a person over the age of 18 goes missing, they have to wait for 24 hours before they start searching. I pleaded with them saying, my son has never gone missing before. That's not in his character and everything. And the police failed to return. I phoned the police station again, and the police officers started shouting and screaming at me, saying I was wasting their vital resources, means that the police officer did come. I did not open the door. That was completely untrue, as I was sitting in the window waiting for the police officer to arrive. When he did arrive, he spoke to the friends who were with Ricky that night, and they said there was a racist incident where they were attacked by some white youths who were shouting, "Pakis, go home." One of them had to adjust his turban because of the fight. And they thought, Ricky said he wanted to go home, and they thought Ricky had come home. So my husband and my brother and the boys went to Kingston Police Station to report this incident, because the officer at the local police station wasn't going to do much. And we went over there, reported Ricky's disappearance, pleaded with them to take a statement. They did not take any statement, either from us or from the boys who were victims of the racist attack. And then they turned around to us saying, maybe you didn't know your son, maybe. You can't hear me? Can you not hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. And maybe, as Asians do, they pressurize their children to get married. And maybe you were doing that to your son, and your son decided to run away. And then he said, maybe he doesn't want to come home. Then the officer at Kingston Police Station winked at us and saying, you never know, your son may be gay. So hearing that made us realize we were not going to get any help from the police. So we started our own search parties. By that time, I had contacted Suresh and John McDonough, who is my MP. They came over. We sat down and we said, well, the police are not going to help us. Let's start our own search parties. We searched for Ricky day and night. We had good big groups trying to leafleting, late night buses, appealing for witnesses. We did everything we could have done, which was not our job. We should have been sitting at home grieving for Ricky, but we were forced out into the streets to look for our son. We continued doing that for 7 days while the police did nothing at all. And then on the 7th day, they brought in this man saying he's the inspector to come in to talk to us. They kept on changing one officer, then the other officer, and that created so much chaos that we didn't know who was dealing with the case. On the 7th day, we were still out looking for Ricky. I left my 3 children at home. I used to leave home very early in the morning, return home very late at the night, just wandering around Kingston looking for Ricky. My children phoned me to say that there were police officers outside. Can she open the door? My daughter said that. I said, yeah, fine, because they were going to collect some belongings, Ricky's belongings. And I was talking to Ricky, I was talking to my children, but by that time, Suresh had a phone call to say that they have some news for us. We went to the office, the police officer came in and they said they found Ricky's body from the bottom of the river. I don't remember much because I collapsed. And when I phoned my home to tell my children that I was coming home, my daughter said, yes, fine. And then before I could say anything, the phone got disconnected. Tried many times, the phone was disconnected. By that time, I returned home and my children met me outside. The police officer unplugged the phone, unplugged the telephone and the television and told my children, the youngest was only 11-year-old, that they found his brother's body from the bottom of the river. They had no right to do that. So the chaos started after that day. They said they were investigating. On the same day, the police officer, the inspector in charge of the investigation, came to see us and said, well, when we found Ricky, his flight buttons were undone. And I can tell you, Mrs. Reed, very pompous, saying, I can tell you, Mrs. Reed, your son went to the river to urinate and fell in and died. The case is closed. No more investigation. Now, I tried to tell him that Ricky had a phobia of open water. Everybody who knew Ricky knew he had a phobia of open water, even though he was a good swimmer. He could go into controlled areas, but he never went near open water. We tried to tell that to the police. The police turned around and said, well, maybe I didn't know my son. So this continued, and then we decided that the only way to get any attention was the media was going mad. And we had quite a lot of coverage from the media, because that came in straight after the Lawrence's inquiry. And we made a complaint against the police. We had a good solicitor. We made a complaint against the police. A lot of things happened, backwards and forwards, loads of investigation, loads of broken promises. We weren't getting anywhere. And then the police compiled a report and they said they bring in another force to deal with it. But the original force said, no, we are dealing with it. We are not going to let go of the case. Maybe Tish can explain it better of the legal process. And so it continued, one thing after another, and we continued to campaign. There isn't a part in the country I haven't traveled, just telling people. And I think the more I talked, the more they tried to shut me up. There were police officers telling me, Mrs. Real, go back to work. You need to go back to work. You need to, continue with your life. Your children need you. You should look after your children. I was a senior homeless persons officer. So you need to go back to work. You need to do this, you need to that. But to hell with everything. My son's more important to me. And I continued to, deal with all the legal process. In time, we had the inquest, and dirty games were played in the inquest. Suresh, who had been supporting me, and my brother, who's the chairman of the campaign, were not allowed to go into the inquest room. They separated me from my support, and I had to go on my own with my husband into the inquest room, and the inquest lasted for 8 days. And on the last day of Mike Mansfield we hired Mike Mansfield to do the inquest. And on the 8th day, the coroner asked the police in front of the jury, what did they think happened? What should be the verdict? The police officer in charge of the investigation got up, faced the jury, and said, in her opinion, it's an accident. So we thought, well, let the jury decide. The jury came with an open verdict. dirty games with our campaign were played by the police. Ricky was attacked. It was a racist attack. Police never acknowledged the racist attack. They kept on saying, you know, racist attack, what racist attack? We can't find the racist. Had they looked for racists, they would have found them. We pointed out the cameras in their own town. The police were not aware of the CCTV cameras in their town. The cameras we handed to them, they lost it. They admitted it in court that they lost it. They lost the vital evidence. The clothes that were returned to me without carrying out any forensic evidence was, they had a hole in his brand new shirt. They blamed me for tearing the shirt. I did not know where the injuries were because the post-mortem was carried out by the police. Then we hired a pathologist to carry out another post-mortem who found blunt impact injuries on Ricky's back. And there was a tear on his back. So I did not see the report. I still haven't seen the report because that's not the way I want to remember my son. But the police blamed me for tearing my son's clothes. This continued for a long time. All the police were racist who dealt with my son's case. And then we had the inquest, open verdict. We were dealing with it. We've been campaigning for the last 23 years. And then suddenly we were called into for a meeting into John McDonald's office. We went to a meeting and we were told that we came under the radar of the police, that we were being spied upon as well, simply because I refused to go away. We met, we asked them the report. We never got the report. We continued campaigning and then we were given a report that was redacted. We said, just put it in the bin. This report is no good to us. Either give us the full copy, proper report, or just burn this one as well. And we still continued fighting for the truth to find out who killed my son. The racist killers are still out on the streets and they may kill again. And if they do kill again, if they kill somebody else's son, the responsibility lies with the police because they gave them a license to kill again. And we had a meeting with submitting, and we found out that, yes, we were given a name of a police officer who was spying on us. It's the same officer who spied on the Lawrence family. And I was told by the judge that there are more officers who spied on us. The question I ask is, why did they spy on us? I'm just a normal mom trying to find out who killed my son. I'm not damaging the security of this country. I'm not a terrorist. Why did they spy on me? The vital resources, when Ricky went missing, I was told that the investigation had stopped because they had no resources. As there were two areas involved, my area pushed the burden of investigating Ricky's death to Kingston. They said because the incident happened in Kingston. The Kingston passed it back to my area, saying that's not where Ricky lived. So the two police stations were at war with each other because they did not want to spend their resources. So now we found out that the resources they failed to spend or they were protecting were to spy on me. The police officers probably came to us dressed in plain clothes, paid by those same resources, sitting in a house, watching my children, what they were doing, listening to each and every word I was saying, listening to each and every person I was meeting, preparing the reports, passing the reports, kept the reports for 22 years. Why did they keep the reports? Was it to discredit my family? Was it to discredit me? Were they trying to muddy Ricky's name? They tried everything, but they could not find anything to discredit my family. But you never know what they have in the reports. I've only got one report, and I had to give an undertaking that I will not show that report to anyone. I'm not even allowed to talk about that report to my husband or my children. And that report raises serious concerns as to what they were doing to me. Tish, you want to come up? Tish?
I think most of the time is up, to be honest. So I'll just add something very briefly at the end, which is that Ricky died almost 24 years ago. It would have been 24 years this October, and he was 20 years old when he died. He was a university student. He was minding his own business. He hadn't done anything wrong, and we were the victim of a double blow of racism. Initially, the racist attack that killed him, and secondly, the racist views of the police that still pervade today, 24 years later, that have meant that we as a family haven't got justice, and those people are still out there. So what I would ask everyone to do today, and this goes back to family justice campaigns, they don't work without support. Otherwise, it's just the family against the state, and that's not a winnable battle. They only work if we've got the support of other people behind us. And on that note, I would say to everyone on this call today, if you can talk about the case to other people, spread awareness of this case and the others that you've heard of today to other people. And most importantly, please sign the link to the petition that's on the notes on the side of this call. We've got 82,000 signatures. We need 100,000 to get a parliamentary debate open so we can get a fresh investigation using techniques that weren't available 24 years ago to try and find out what happened to Ricky and try and get some justice and some peace.
Can I just read 2 lines, please?
Yes, please, go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry, it's not 2 lines, it's just a page. Okay. It's called Racism and Justice Collided for Us. Racism and justice collided one day. Unfortunately, racism came to the top. My fight for justice for my son Ricky will continue, and I will not let it drop. We searched for Ricky in Kingston for full 7 days and nights. Police did not take our concerns seriously, so we started the Justice for Ricky real fight. The authorities showed no respect to the family. Racism played a huge part in Ricky's investigation. Investigation was flawed and evidence was lost. They gave no regard to our feelings or situation. Authorities pushed the investigation aside, watched my movements and spied on my family. All we wanted was to find out who killed my Ricky. Instead, their spying added to our agony. My family needs peace and justice. It's a promise I made to my son. I wonder who gets justice and how, as the racist killed my son for fun. Please do not offer only condolences. Empty words do not help my fight. I need to get justice for my son. I do not have the luxury of time in my sight. I need everyone to support and sign my petition so that I can get justice for my son and rest. Racism is a word that I despise. It killed my Ricky. His memories are still close to my chest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a powerful presentation and powerful story. Thank you so much, Sukhdev, for sharing the story of your son. And Tish, thank you so much. We're gonna open it up for questions. I think I'm gonna do this maybe 2 questions, 1 or 2 questions at a time. If you have any questions, please either, if you're on video, raise your hand, or if you want to use the application, you can raise your hand on the application as well. And then we could do it like that. So if anyone got any questions? Right. Actually, I've got a question. I think my question will be more towards, maybe Natasha can answer this, but you know, Attiq and Sukhdev can come in if they want. It is in relation to the undercover stuff that Sukhdev kind of touched upon. This is how I found out about Sukhdev's story, because I saw her speak at the Spy Cops conference that happened in December 2019. From your experience, because I know you're the Grenfell project coordinator as well, and caseworker, and you know a lot about family justice campaigns. Why do the police, instead of helping the family justice campaigns, why do they, in a lot of cases, they kind of turn on them and basically spy on them? Why do you think that happens?
I could probably say I don't know, because as you say, I mean, at the end of the day, all families want to know, particularly, you know, talk about what happened to Ricky. It's pretty straightforward to try and find out what's happened to a young man that's gone missing. As to why the police decided that they should spy on a family, I don't know. I mean, it's, as you say, I mean, when, particularly, of course, the kind of cases that we deal with, when someone's died in police custody or when they're in prison, particularly police custody, and you find that there's a lot of trying to reduce the blame on officers, or explaining things away that don't make a lot of sense, I suppose. I don't know why they do that, but I think, you know, being straightforward, discrimination is a real thing, and it comes out in these cases, you know, from the way that people are spoken about. They were, you know, we've got Inquest where these men that have died in custody were the biggest men that people have ever seen. They were dangerous. They were all of these things that they, you know, these kind of discriminatory and racist attributes that they like to attach to people to explain away why they died. Really, that's not always the case. I think there's an inquest happening at the moment, Leon Briggs, which has been quite a lot in the press, and the way he was treated as a man that was unwell, and the police attending and you know, and him dying in that situation rather than getting help that he needed. I don't know why the police do, but I think, you know, we're all quite clear on discrimination and the impact that has on people's lives. And I think this is, as a family, you've already said, an example of that. Sorry, I think Attiq wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry,
so
Attiq, you want to go next?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Just my opinion, just to be frank, I think it's a combination of two basic things. One, as an institution, it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction that they, rather than to see the family's pursuit as a pursuit for truth or justice, they see it as a witch hunt of themselves. And so what happens is they go into this automatic mode of trying to protect themselves, and then doing that, do stupid things like spying on the victims or victim blaming. And that then, when you couple it with the fact, and the police themselves acknowledge it, they've got a problem with institutional racism. And it doesn't stop there. They've got institutional sexism, they've got institutional every ism you can think of. There's a problem with that within the police force. And when you've got an institution like that, which does not hold itself to account the way it should, the stats which I started with speak for themselves, and then the knee-jerk reaction to protect themselves, when you put that all into a mixing pot, what comes out of that pot is just extremely ugly, and the product is what we see and are described by families who are campaigning for justice.
Sukhdev, do you want to go next? I think you had your hand up.
Hi, I think it's so simple. It's because I can talk about myself, because I attended Macpherson inquiry each and every day. I gave submission at the Macpherson inquiry, and we had recommendation as well, and which was printed because we wanted to change the role of the liaison officer after what had happened to my children. Because like I said, my children went into a shock. Tish nearly died because she had an asthma attack when the police told her. So we were bringing all their failings out in the open. And also, like, we are co-participants in the undercover police inquiry as well. So we attended the, I forgot what's the name of, civil rights movement as well. So we got involved with, I got involved with everything. So because we didn't stop speaking, because we were bringing out the mistakes out to the public, and I think they got threatened, and that's the reason they started spying on us. Tish, you got anything more to add? Okay.
Thank you so much, Sukhdev, and for the answers. I think, I've got one more, thing to ask. So again, like, when in the pursuit of justice, it's very difficult for the families to get justice. And obviously one thing Natasha talked about is like legal aid and why it's difficult to get legal aid and stuff. For those that don't know, what was the purpose of legal aid and why is it difficult for people to get legal aid?
Sorry. We couldn't get legal aid because I was working. I was told to give up my job and my husband to give up my job to get legal aid. And we said, we are not going to give up our jobs. So we said, if we have to sell a house, we'll do it. We had to pay quite a lot of money, quite a large amount of money for legal fees and everything else, but we did it. We did it for Ricky.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, so why is it difficult to get legal aid? And is there like a charity or an organization that people can donate to so that families who are struggling to get legal aid, they can get access to that pot of money and then get help with their legal aid? Is there anything that we can donate to in regards to this? Yeah, Natasha and Attiq, if you guys want to go.
I mean, why do families not get legal aid? Because as has been said, it's means tested. So if families are working, and as I say, it's not a high threshold. You know, if there are two people working, then most likely they're not going to qualify. You can make applications for, you know, for waivers, but it's a complicated process. The point being is that when somebody dies, if it is an Article 2 inquest, there's some legal aid funding available, but then you have to make that application, or what's trying to manage a post-mortem, or finding a lawyer, or finding out what's happened. There's so much that's, you know, thrown at families at that point. The reason why the legal aid campaign was set up was for that reason, because there are, you know, every family that comes in, they don't get automatic funding. But as I say, straight away, there is a legal department for the police, for the prison, for the mental health, and they are not only getting lawyers, but the highest paid QCs also. So it's another issue with the system, and really blocks families from getting justice, the justice that they need. And as has been said, you have families who are selling their houses, who are having to crowdfund. Crowdfunding is one of the things that people have done, but it's not acceptable. You shouldn't have to go through that in order to get any quality of arms to find out what happened to their relative. So yeah, that's the issue with legal aid. And as sorry, you did ask about where families can donate to. I mean, the legal aid campaign, as I said, and I'll drop it in the chat, did build momentum. We're still not there though, and I think this is one of the issues with the campaigns as well, and has already been said. It takes too long. Families shouldn't have to keep campaigning for these simple things of being able to get a lawyer to help them with a case. So legal aid campaign is one thing. As I said, the National Mikey Bell Memorial Fund doesn't cover legal aid. It doesn't have the ability to do that. It does help families with financial hardships of, you know, funeral arrangements, sorting out, you know, campaign materials and things of that nature as well. I'll put that in the chat as well.
Okay,
thank you so much. Attiq, you still got your hand.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, please, that question. The reality is the system is rigged. That's the reality. The legal aid is administered by the Ministry of Justice, and they do what the government tells them to do. The government clearly thinks it's more important to protect themselves, so they'll give unlimited funding to all of their branches of institution, but not to the ordinary person. And so how can you have equality arms? How can you have justice if one party has unlimited access to legal resources and the other one doesn't? And so what all the legal aid rules are there for is they're deliberately there to stop people from getting legal aid, because the government doesn't want to give money to people to fight cases unless they really have to. And that's why the whole system is rigged the way it is, to make it as difficult as possible to get legal aid, to protect public funds, to protect the taxpayers' money. That's what it's all about. And that is only the areas where you can get legal aid. If you look at the erosion of legal aid, there are many pockets of areas of law now where there is no legal aid at all.
Thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, you can either raise your hand via the application, or if you want to raise your hand on the video, that will be, you know, therefore I can see it, and then basically I'll unmute you. Actually, I do have one kind of another kind of thing, because someone's just messaged me about this aspect, and I'm going to phrase it like this: how important in the pursuit of justice, when you have family justice campaigns, obviously when families have to start campaigns, obviously it's a very traumatic time. As we heard from Sukhdev's talk, it's very traumatic, it's very difficult, and obviously keeping united can be very difficult as well. How important is unity amongst the family members and the wider community? How important is that in regards to attaining justice for for the cause? Sukhdev, do you want to go first?
It's very important. It worked for us because my children did all the paperwork for me. Like I used to say, ring this person, ring that person. So that, and I traveled the country giving speeches and everything. And my husband stayed at home to look after the children. It's a family-run campaign. And Suresh and my brother Moni and John McDonald had always stood by me. All I had to do was, if there was a problem, just pick up a phone. John McDonald, I can ring him at midnight and he'll call me and he'll be there. So, I was fortunate in that way. But then I think I had to change myself as well. From a mother, I became a campaigner. So there were lots of things that I had to, give up. Stop it. I had to more or less give up my life. And in one of my poems, I write that a mother died and a campaigner was born. And that's why we did as a whole family. We stop it, go get out of the room, come on. Yeah. Sorry about this, yeah? And that's how we worked. I think unity is really important because when you're torn up, stop, go on. When you're torn up, your mind is all over the place. With us, we haven't even started grieving because I myself promised myself that I will not start grieving until I find Ricky's killers. So I think that there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, and there's a lot of love as well for my family who have kept me sane. And I think you need unity. Unity is most important.
Much. Attiq, you got your hands raised again.
Hi. Okay, unity is extremely important, and I'm glad you asked that question because across the country, we keep seeing this in all communities, pockets of the community which will undermine family justice campaigns just to get little brownie points with the local police, local councillor, local MP. And it's really sad because I've also seen many examples where the same people who've done that, a few years later, their own family member has been a victim of injustice. And then they are back in the same boat as well. And the message that should go out there is this: police are public servants, which means that we, the public, are the masters. So there's no need for us to cozy up to them. We pay their wages for paying our taxes. And everybody who's in politics, councillors, MPs, etc., they are there because of our votes. So if as a community we all stand together, shoulder to shoulder, we can hold people to account and really put some pressure on those institutions that try and cover things up. Whereas if you have people trying to, get little brownie points from a local council, local MP, local chief constable, and undermining campaigns, it's actually pretty stupid. And it's only a matter of time, I'd say, that those people become victims of their own disloyalty.
Thank you so much, Attiq. So Remy and then Natasha. So Remy, do you want to go first? You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm just unmuting. Thanks. Natasha, did you want to come in on that question before I ask the questions in the chat?
Yeah, I'll just add, I think that with the families that we've worked with, of course, things like the United Families and Friends campaign is unity for families. I mean, people always have their own case, their own inquests, their own cases, their own campaigns and fights. But I think the unity is important also for sustainability. It's a lot to carry this by yourself. So, you know, I know in particular the families we work with, they, you know, learn from each other, and also it's, as I say, about sustainability and how they can actually look after themselves during this. There's only so much your lawyer or Inquest can tell you. We're not going through it. So I think, you know, even for that purpose, the unity amongst families is really important. Yeah, and solidarity.
Thanks, Natasha. I'll go to the chat. There's a question here for Attiq. What role do family justice campaigns play alongside legal proceedings, and how can they help support legal proceedings?
So the Shukri campaign is a brilliant example of this, where the family campaign not only maintained the spotlight on the case, so people did not forget, but the people, the decision makers and the people at risk, such as the police, other institutions, were on their toes and realized the seriousness of the situation. And they couldn't just brush it under the carpet because everybody was watching. And that's where the family campaign is really important. The family campaign gives the family support. It shows them that people do care, no matter what the authorities may or may not have done to support. The world cares, and that helps the family a lot. But also for the legal team and any legal action, one of the basic principles of justice, this is why all court proceedings in England are in the public domain, is one of the core principles of justice, that justice has to be seen to be done. And therefore, for it to be seen to be done, if the public are alive to the issues and everybody's looking at something and talking about it, it adds that pressure to the decision makers and everybody involved to make sure that the truth is uncovered and people are held to account.
Remy, do you want to ask the second question?
Natasha, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come in?
Oh, no, I think it was from before.
Okay, thanks. A question for Sukhdev in the chat. What has been the role of the media, Sukhdev?
I must say the media has been brilliant. Most of the time, everywhere I went, the media used to follow us. And there were times when my front door in the early days was always open because there were loads and loads of people coming in, paying respects, and they were horrified as to what had happened to Ricky, and also horrified at the attitude of the police and how we were treated. So media used to come and walk in, and loads of attention, loads of articles being printed. I have been on television so many times. I was given Woman of Courage Award by then Prime Minister's wife, Sherry Blair. So quite a lot of stuff, yeah. Media was really good at highlighting my case.
Thanks, Sukhdev.
Thank you.
Another question here from Sabrina. Aside from signing petitions and staying vocal on the issues and spreading awareness via social media, what else can we do?
I suppose that's for all the speakers. So you can you know.
I think we've identified that access to justice is a big issue. So I think that is a battle now that needs to be had. The government realizes, and there's a number of reviews and consultations ongoing at the moment with the Ministry of Justice and legal aid practitioners. But I think it really is a time where the public needs to step up as well and really start voicing their dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs, with the fact that access to justice is almost nil in the current climate.
I think so. Sorry. I think the other thing, in addition to that, is keep supporting the families. And as you say, families are going through this for years. You know, I've already said 24 years with the real family. And like I say, public pressure and interest tends to fall off. And the media, of course, plays a part in that as well. But keeping up to date, staying involved with different organizations that do the work, but also the families campaigns directly is really important.
Thanks, Natasha.
I think I've got, I mean, does anyone else want to answer that question? Because I've got a question. Sukhdev, you're on mute.
I'm just going to quickly say that the most important thing is the support of everyone. Start talking. If you hear about any cases, start talking about it. Start contacting the family. Ask if they need any support. Because remember, you just, people just spend about 10 minutes talking to the family and everything. At the end of the day, that person comes home alone, close the door, and feels very, very alone. So offer support. And if there are petitions going out like ours, I don't know how this is going to be publicized, my petition here, but if somebody has a petition, make sure you sign it, and support that person. If you don't support it, that person may feel that the justice system has failed them. And if there is another problem the same person experiences, or his friend or family experiences, then they're going to say, well, we don't have any faith in the justice system, and we're not going to support another person because we don't want to see the failure.
Thank you so much. To be honest with you, I think you've answered the question that I had in mind. We will obviously do what we can to promote the petition. I've signed it myself, and the Association of Muslim Lawyers will basically push the petition as far as we can, and we will do what we can to support. I think, I'm going to ask my question, but I'm going to paraphrase it in a different way. There's a lot of people out there who don't know the existence of family justice campaigns, and they don't know what the obstacles that family justice campaigns go through. Sukhdev, you kind of mentioned about some of the obstacles, undercover policing and all that kind of stuff. What else can we do apart from just spreading awareness about the campaign? I think that's the main thing we can do, but what else can we do to get the public more engaged in this issue? Because there's a lot of people who simply don't know about the issue of family justice campaigns, and that's to everyone, all the speakers.
I think one of the things that could help is some sort of a justice fund or crowdfunding for justice campaigns where everybody comes together and assists, because clearly funding is an issue, and it was one of the obstacles. And so hand in hand with the awareness to also tackle that. Because, for example, in a case, let's example, I'm running a case, I might be able to do it for free. But to run a case, you might need the assistance of expert reports, for example. And depending on the complexity of the case, there could be multiple different types of expert reports needed that need to be analysed. Now, expert reports, they could cost thousands of pounds. And if a family hasn't got legal aid, has got access to no funding, with all the goodwill in the world, there's only so far a case can go. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I think some sort of, if the government isn't going to help us, we've got to help ourselves, and we need to start thinking about some sort of crowdfunding or justice fund or something for family justice campaigns, I'd say.
Thank you so much. Anyone else want to go?
I can speak for Inquest is that we have a newsletter that we put out, and a lot of the time there will be calls for action on that, because things change. There may be direct things that families are asking for at different points. Inquest hearings are public hearings, of course, when we're able to attend them, and sometimes families do want to come out and support that. Having people in the room, sitting there, hearing what's happening. You will only get so much from the media, you will only get so much from the press, and being there, that support is invaluable for families. So being is a lot to do with it as well. As I keep repeating the same thing because I think it's important that keeping the pressure on, and I think it's mentioned earlier, when they see people in the courtroom, when it's not just the family, they know that this, that people are taking notice of what's happening. Too often, I think a lot of the issues that people go through and are having to campaign on are under the radar, and people don't know about it until, unfortunately, impacts them. Many of the families that we work with say that, they didn't know about Inquest, they didn't know about this. People are shocked about the experiences that they go through after a death, because it's so neatly packed away and hidden. And of course, we know that can be for a reason. So, and as it's already been said, about it with and take notice, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you so much. If anyone wants to ask, Lukman Khan, I see you got your hand up. If you want to go next, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm not really sure whether this is just about a single family justice campaign.
Can you speak up a little bit? Sorry, it's a bit difficult to hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me properly now?
Yeah, we can. If you could please keep the question short, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this is just about a single family justice campaign, or about family justice campaign, or about justice in general. So I don't know whether to ask a question. Well, it's not a question, it's actually making a statement. So one of the problem we've got is the infrastructure that we had through the Commission for Racial Equality, which wasn't that good, but that's non-existent because the Equality and Human Rights Commission has completely discharged any responsibility it might have had. And one of the weaknesses we've got about anything to do with legal stuff, which are really big, broad issues, they just won't actually engage. They might as well not exist. So we can have these campaigns forever as individual campaigns, but we just haven't got the infrastructure at all anymore in this country. And I'm just wondering what the Muslim lawyers and people like that actually think about the broader issue on this.
Thank you. So I think Lukman's question was about the broader issues of not having the infrastructures there for families to get justice. And I suppose, and I kind of assume, I'm kind of also thinking that there's an element of institutional racism that still needs to be challenged in there, and there is no recourse to that. So how do we get that? What do we need to do to get that kind of recourse to justice? What kind of, I suppose, what kind of institutions that we need to change? What kind of institutional change do we need to see so that family justice campaigners can get justice, and also the things that cause the rise of family justice campaigns, they don't happen anymore. It's open to all of the speakers. Whoever wants to go first can go first.
We need to see accountability and transparency. For example, with the police, it's almost shocking that somebody working at McDonald's or Sainsbury's who delivers a bad service to a customer is more likely to get the sack than someone who works on the front line of the police force. And I think that's a starting point. To build public trust and confidence in any institution, the public need to see real transparency in terms of processes and accountability, and people held to account and not barriers. And an organization set up by the IOPC, we need to see real investigations by them when they're supposed to be holding the police to account. For example, Greater Manchester Police had a report published by a Majesty Inspectorate, which was so serious and damning about them, but they've been placed into special measures, and the Chief Constable resigned from his job last month. But where's the IOPC report on that? And the IOPC was formed because the IPCC was failing. But from what I've seen, all I can see is repetitions of what the IPCC were doing. So those who are there to hold people to account need to be truly independent too, and unbiased, and not all from the same cohort trying to cover each other's backs, because all that's going to do is create distrust in those institutions, and people won't come to them for justice or expect justice from them.
Yes, Sukhdev, please go ahead.
Attiq just mentioned about accountability. I forgot to tell you about the photographs that were taken at the post-mortem were kept obviously at the police station, but I had a phone call from a Daily Mirror journalist asking me if I had given permission for an article to be printed. I said, I know nothing of any article being printed. And she said to me, the reason she asked me is because the head of the investigation, who had retired, blaming us for losing his job, had kept the photographs. No, remember, he's not a police officer anymore, kept the photographs of taken at Ricky's inquest and was trying to give it to the Daily Mail journalist to print an article with the photographs in it. Yeah. So when she told me this, I tried to open the window, tried to jump out of the window because I did not want anyone seeing those photographs. Can you imagine how distressing that would be? Talking about trusting the police, I don't trust them at all. And I spoke to Suresh, who contacted the police. And they said, oh, no, don't worry about that. He said, we have recovered the photographs from this retired officer's house. He said he just kept the photographs. He was preparing for the inquest. Now, when I was working, if I had stolen a computer, I would be prosecuted. And this police officer, who was no longer a police officer, but had a possession of my son's photographs, walked away. So where is the transparency? Who do we trust?
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask for a last round of questions. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. And if you don't, then I think we're going to round it up for tonight. So any questions? No questions. Okay. And normally what I do to round up is give the speakers 1 minute to say final few words before we end the event. So I'm going to keep up to that tradition. So if all of the speakers want to just sum up a few words just to end off the event and give us their final kind of message you can say before the event ends, that'll be great. So we started off with Attiq, Natasha and Sukhdev, but now we'll do it the other way around. So Sukhdev, do you have a minute just for some final few words?
Sign a petition, please, and support our campaign. I'm not talking about just my campaign. I'm talking about all the campaigns that are happening now, because each and every person who sets up a campaign starts a campaign because he's desperate to get justice. So please, please be there, support people. They need you. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha?
Yeah, I think I probably just echo the same, to be honest. I've said it already, but follow Inquest. We have an e-newsletter that we put out regularly with updates on the work that we've been doing, and with families, of course, and the work that families have been doing, campaigns that are coming up, and things that people can get involved with. So continue to spread the word, really, and talk about what's happening.
And Attiq, do you want to say final few words?
Yeah, it's just a message for everyone out there that, as I said, we as a community need to stop being fearful. I mean, as a Muslim, our programming and DNA should be that we are fearful of the creator, not the creation. And that really needs to stop. We've got nothing to be fearful about. We're not here because somebody's done us a favor. Our forefathers have paid for our right to be here literally in blood and sweat. When the World War finished, we came here, and our migrant forefathers that built this country. So we've got every right to be here as anybody else. Get rid of imposter syndrome in yourselves. Get rid of fear in yourselves. It's time to stand up and speak for your rights and fight for justice.
Thank you so much. I think we're just going to round it off there. Thank you to all the speakers that came to speak about about their family justice campaigns and organizations. Very powerful, and I hope it woke a lot of us up. It definitely woke me up, and it makes me want to get more involved in these kind of things. So thank you so much to Sukhdev Real, Tish Real, Attiq Malik, and Natasha Thompson. Please, guys, check out the Justice for Ricky Real campaign, Inquest, and Justice for Shukri campaign. Also, I would like to thank the Association of Muslim Lawyers and the Society of Asian Lawyers for hosting this event. Thank you, Remy, for basically giving me the permission to do this. This is something that I feel very passionately about, so thank you so much. And also Ranjit Sond, thank you so much for partnering up with us for this event. We definitely look forward to working more with you guys, so stay tuned. Everyone else, please check out the websites, the Association of Muslim Lawyers, the Society of Asian Lawyers, and also please check out the family justice campaigns websites, as we just mentioned, Justice for Ricky Real, Justice for Shukri, and also Inquest website as well. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you guys in regards to this issue more. But until then, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Can
Good
I-
evening.
Thank you. Can I just say that I have a Facebook under Sukhdev Rio, and is updated. Whatever we are doing, the Facebook is updated. So if you want to join, you're free to do so, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.